The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Rise! Get yourselves together! Rise! Stand up and live your life! Rise! Get yourselves together! Rise! Hands up high!
Welcome to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Peroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini.
Tell everybody about our sponsors, or our partners, I should
Our
say.
partners. We want to thank Jay Jung from City Athletic for partnering with our show, Rise Above, and also Marie Blacklock of Meal Prep Vegas. And she's been supplying Joe and I with our meals for the last few months for our preps, and she delivers to your house. So you can go on the internet and you can. Do you have her website there?
I got the phone number.
Oh, you have the phone number.
I do. 702-624-9286.
Yes, so if you contact Marie, she'll customize your meals for you, and it's nice too because they're delivered right to your door.
Perfect. So today, well, we had off last week because we were in New Jersey for the Mr. Universe show, of which I was competing in, and so we'll get to that later. But the title of today's show, I want to call it Transformation, Turning Walls into Doorways, because sometimes we don't always get what you want, right? We do the Rolling Stone thing. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need. And
Slap upside the head.
It's actually really true. So I had so much time to think these last few days. We traveled to New Jersey. Now, of course, the airline that we took, you can never take a direct route anymore, it seems. So we got stuck everywhere. We were in Texas for a while, and then we went to New Jersey, and coming back, we got stuck in Fort Lauderdale with a layover for 4 hours. Then it was 5 hours on the way back. So I had so much time just to sit there and think. And I was thinking, how would I help another person who made a goal and did everything they thought they could do well, and external forces tell them that they didn't do well? What I mean by that is that when I look at the pictures, I thought, that was great. I've never looked better. I was really happy. I was. And we talk about this on the show a lot, about internal versus external validation. And I thought, the words sound great. I know what you're supposed to do, and I know how you're supposed to do it. Great, internal validation. I looked at the pictures, I looked at my performance, I did everything I could do, control all the variables, and I did well, except the judges didn't feel that way. So now we have to think of, okay, here's the next part. How much does external validation matter? Well, if you're a psychologically strong human being, well-adjusted, it shouldn't matter at all. But then we get to the next part. We live I was thinking about this from Fort Lauderdale to here. We live in a capitalistic world, and without any external validation from anybody else, we would all be poor. Right? You could be the greatest locksmith in the world, but if the world doesn't think so, well, then you're poor. You could be the greatest artist in the world, feel you're good at something, and you could put all your time and effort into it and love the fact that you're doing it and have great self-esteem over your hard work. But if nobody wants to buy anything, you're poor. Vincent van Gogh is considered to be one of the greatest painters who ever lived. But he never sold a painting while he was alive. So how does that help him? So these are the things that I was thinking about in terms of, okay, we have therapists out there that think that they know a lot because they read a book and they go, well, I know this from the book. But the book really has nothing to do with real life once you get down to it, because there is a certain amount of external validation, because that's what money is. It's other people deem you in some sense to have some worth. And so I had a lot of these thoughts going through my head, not always perfect at one time, but I let them sift through my head, and I was throwing out some of the ones that I was getting too emotional with, throwing out the ones that I think I was acting a little too irrational with, things like this. So
but I think some of this stuff, and it's like, because you're a coach, you're a trainer, and I know you have competitors that competed, and I've worked with one person, and I do compete myself, and I think in the very beginning of it, you kind of have to know what you're up against and what are the reasons that you're doing it prior to all that. And like you said, losing or not losing, but not doing as well as they think you should have done. It comes down to how well do you think you did. And like you said before, with all these artists out there, I think an artist continues to go forward because yes, the outside validation would be nice, but they really love what they do. So they say, well, maybe not everybody likes my music type, or they don't like me or whatever, but I know I'm really good at what I do, and I'm going to continue to do it and and have joy while I'm doing it. And a lot of those people, and you fall into that category, you have another job, you have another career path that you want to take. And I think when people 100% identify themselves to one thing, it could be the housewife that identifies herself as only the housewife. That's all she does. When you ask somebody, who are you? They'll always say, I'm a hairdresser. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about who are you underneath all the superficial stuff and the career that you chose. Who are you? And I think underneath everything that you just said, you have to ask those questions. Who am I? And why am I doing this? If I did the best I could, why do I still need to feel validated by, whether it's money, adoration, whatever it might be? Those are things that, we all like, but you may never get. But there's people that still say, you know what, I'm still going to do it because I enjoy it. And it could be painting, it could be writing a song. We know musicians out there that you listen to them and you go, oh my God, this guy's amazing. How come he's not famous? But he didn't quit. He didn't say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore because I didn't get noticed by Sony Records or, whatever. So I'm just going to throw in the towel and I'm done. And I think that's, I think if you feel bad about something, and I know I've been in that position when I felt bad about not doing well at whatever it might be. It could be, maybe I screwed up a client's hair, or, I said the wrong thing to a client I was working with, and I can look back on it and I go, I think if I would have done that instead of this, I would have done better, and I know I would have done better, but I was trying to take a shortcut. Or the same thing when I went into a show and I could say later on, you know what, I knew I shouldn't have been doing this show because it was difficult at my job. I had a lot of, and that's not an excuse. People would say to you, well, you're just making an excuse because you didn't do well. I think that in our heads, like I know in my head going into something that it's not the right time, and I went and did it anyway because I might have felt like I spent money on it, I committed to it, I don't want to let my friends down, whatever it might be, because there's a pride thing involved in it too. If you're prideful and you care, you don't want to be judged either by these people in a negative way that we want. The same people that we ironically want the validation from are the same ones that we don't want to think any less of us because we didn't hit a goal. So, whenever haven't done that good in something, I can always point at myself a little bit and say, well, maybe this condition could have been better. Maybe I could have been in a different place in my life when I did that. Maybe if I would have made this decision better or differently, it would have been, the outcome might have been different. But when and like in your situation, you did everything right. You know that you prepped, you ate, you slept, you trained, you did everything you were supposed to do, and the outcome didn't come out the way you could. In my opinion, it's disappointing. Like it would be disappointing.
Right. No,
like I would feel like this sucks. I competed in hair contests, and over the year, not since I've been with you, but in the past before I had my daughter and that, and I thought it was amazing. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. They picked that girl's shit over mine. Like my updos are amazing. And so I just got to a point where I was like, but that doesn't identify me as a good stylist. And I think that's where the differential is. I said to myself, you know what? I don't care that these other hairstylists that have been around 100 years think that her work is better than mine, because I know that my work is good. And sorry that your eye doesn't like it. But I had plenty of people that did like it. And it's the same thing with bodybuilding. I think if you prep and you do everything right. My question to you earlier was, with the bodybuilding and certain things, when does it become, is it healthy? and when does it become not healthy? Because it becomes, if it gets you to that point that I don't feel good about myself, I did everything I could still do and yet I still feel bad, at what point does it maybe have a turning point where it goes from healthy to not healthy? Because now in your brain and your emotional part, you still, my thing is now, do you feel like you need to go back and wreck yourself again and continue to do that at the expense of a family, expenses, your own health, which would concern me? Those are questions that I would ask is, is there still joy in it? Do you really still enjoy the process to be willing to go through all that? And then in the end of the time that some judge say, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Peroni, you're not what we're looking for. And, that could go on forever and ever and ever. And it's the same thing in jobs. People bust their asses every day in their jobs, and there'll be that one person that, they don't work as hard, they're not as dedicated or anything to their job, but because maybe they know the right person or they said the right thing right at that right moment, they get promoted and the other person doesn't. I mean, at what point do we become mentally stable enough to say, what, I'm going to let this go. I'm disappointed I didn't get that promotion, but I'm not going to let it, ruin me as a person or make me feel like I'm no good. I can't do this no more. You've done it your whole life. I've only done like 9 shows, and I know it started to do that for me. And I said, you know what? I personally am not going to be, mentally, I mean, there's a lot of mental tenacity that goes through the beginning of it, the processes of it, and then you're going through it, and you're not doing a lot of things maybe you want to do because physically and mentally you can't. And at the end of it, it comes down to, I don't feel good now because some judge just said I don't look like they want. So now I feel everything I did in the last 4 months or 30 years doesn't matter, and I'm still going to feel like crap.
Well, there's a lot in there you said. But John had a hand up. Go ahead.
How would you like to be an actor or an actress? And going to audition after audition after audition, and you've been to school and you know all this stuff and you think you're a good actor or actress, and you keep getting shot down. I mean, what is that going to do to a person? How do they keep going after that? You know what I mean? You go to 100 auditions and you maybe finally get one, and it's just they just weren't looking for you.
Right.
But here's the thing. I think people naturally want to ask that question too. Like, how did you do? Like, I think they naturally, because that's their way of showing they care. I think where I would have to separate that question is, this happened to me, is all my clients, whenever I've competed, whatever, they're like, go girl, go. Like, I could be the worst one up there, and in their brains they're like, that's my girl, whatever. Yeah. What separates it for me is the client or somebody in the gym. I had a girl at the gym come up and say, oh, you didn't place? I go, no, I didn't. She goes, oh. And she kind of like, end of conversation.
Yeah.
That's the difference between a caring person and a person that's in it about it for the wrong reasons. And so those people I dismiss because I know they don't really care about me anyway, so why should I even care about what they think? But if a friend of mine was to say to me, which nobody ever has done, said to me, well, how did you place? Oh, you didn't get the top 3? You didn't get, they might say, God, I had you in the top 5. I can't believe, whatever. But if it came down to me not placing, that they're going to give me and kind of walk off. Yeah. They don't really care about me.
Well, they're not your friends.
Most people are your cheerleaders, no matter what, and even your clients and your friends. They're inspired all the time that you go and do it. And like I said, if one of your clients said that to you, was to say, "Oh, you didn't do good," I would probably say you're fired. Get out of here, because you know what, you can't. I mean, no, but I'm just saying. But you can't work with that anyway, because now there becomes the other side of it that you're supposed to be, as a coach, on that side of that. If somebody says, and it doesn't have to be competition. I mean, I had somebody this morning say, "Wow, I can't believe I did 15 of those. I could only do 2," and I said, "That's where you're getting better as a coach." It's not a race. It's about getting better. And at what level are you judging yourself better? Because if I got down on the floor and I ripped out 100 sit-ups for this girl, how bad would she feel? But 12 years ago when I started training, I remember the pain of that, of not being able to do 2 or 3 sit-ups and thinking that I'm never going to be good at this. But what's your definition of good? I mean, what is your definition of good?
Well, but isn't that a personal thing? And isn't that
It's
your
supposed to be.
definition of good may not be the same as Joe's or mine.
No, it's
or
personal growth. And when
Yeah.
you lose, I think in anything, it could be your job, it could be your children, it could be your marriage, it can be my relationship to you. You know, you have to know kind of, what am I in this for? What are the, I think people say, well, everybody sets themselves up for disappointment because you have expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if anything that we go into, if I go into a relationship with Joe and I say, I expect this man to do A, B, and C for me every day, I'm going to be disappointed because every day he's not going to feel like going, how are you today? There might be a day he goes, how are you? And he goes off in the bathroom or, whatever. That's when people get hurt and they get disappointed. And I think when you do everything right and you set yourself up in the right position and then something happens, I think that's where that expectation kind of makes it even you kind of feel worse about it. I don't know.
Yeah, let me try to pull some of that apart, because I don't want you to think that I feel bad about how I am or how I did. It's none of that. I did what I can do. I control the things that I can, and because I do that, I actually feel really good. And I was trying to think about how I can turn this to help people in their everyday life, because not everybody competes in a Mr. Universe, right? That has no, it doesn't relate to anybody. But what does relate is that when you are trying to do something and a wall comes up, whether it might be your fault or not. Now, if it's your fault, you can look at it and say, okay, I can step back and go, what can I do to make this situation better? And that's actually liberating because it's under your control. But what if a wall comes up and you say, okay, well, how can I eliminate this wall? And you start looking and you go, in my case, my development was as good or better than the competitors. My leanness was as good as most of the competitors, actually probably more. What stopped me then? Oh yeah, 4 years ago I had a hip replacement and I have one side of my body that looks deformed in a sense compared to my other side. It's a different shape, it's a different size. And I can't hide that from the front, the side, or the back. So I have to take a look at it and say, is there anything under my control that I can do to make this better for me? The answer is probably no. That's a wall. So I can't do anything about that. So now I have to look for a doorway. Your role in life changes a little bit. Your identity changes because, and I'm not here to brag, I'm here to tell the truth. Like in order for me to even compete, I have to be authentic, and I will be. It is nothing for me to win local shows or national qualifier shows. You're lucky I even diet for a week and I win. I've not lost one. That's just the reality of the situation. I don't lose those shows. So those shows do nothing for me. I get bored. They're nothing. The last show I won, I was like, I took the medals, went back. I think I had a Diet Coke and I listened to some 70s music in the hotel room, and I was like, let's go back home. Like, it was nothing more than taking a shower to me. Like, it really, I get no rise out of it. I have no, dopamine hit or rush from it. It doesn't, I don't feel it much from it. Because the only thing I got out of it was my workouts and my eating, which I do that anyway, so I don't need to do that in public. So the competition meant nothing. What does mean something is to go to the highest of levels. And what I notice at the highest of levels, those people are so good that you can't go in there with one leg that really doesn't work compared to another. So now I'm at this thing of, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to hit your head against a wall here, or not compete at the lower level because that bores me to death? So it's like I have to start rearranging what I do. And you have to realize I started this journey when I was 11 years old. I'm 52, so I've been training for 41 years. So you buy into this whole thing of bodybuilding is what I do. It's who I am. It's a big part of me. It's not who I am. I know I can do other things, but certainly the competition that I love so much, I think water has found its own level. And if I really want to wait it out, I'd have to wait until I'm 60, and hopefully that everybody else starts getting their hip replacements too. And then we'll be on equal ground again, and then I'll win again. But honestly, when you look at the pictures, you're like, oh my God, like, why didn't he do well? It's like, well, if you're not looking at my right leg and you don't see that in the picture, everything looks great. So it's something that's kind of out of my control. So I was thinking about my
I have
feelings.
to say, you're the best one looking one up there too.
You know, and I had...
It is, because they're all bald. These guys are so butt ugly.
I
These
also wanna-
bodybuilders, they're bald, and they're all looking, I'm going to kill you. You know,
I
and he
also-
walks out there, and he's like, I'm like, God, he's so handsome. He's like the best looking one out there.
Now, I also want to say one of my friends is a guy named Rico. We've had him on the show, and we've had this conversation where he has a great build, but why do they not always give him what he deserves?
He's too pretty.
And part of it's the same thing with me. I'm not saying I'm whatever, but when you have a bunch of old men that are judging, they get really creeped out when there's a good-looking man in front of them. They don't want to give that guy the justice. Like, I'm probably the only guy in that group that had hair, you know, that's still like, you know, and you know, and that plays into it too, you know. But listen, it's not an excuse but we do know you have to face the situation. And when you go into national shows of this caliber, you already know it's at least a 3-year process, unless you're so amazing that you just blow everybody away, and most people are not. Most people are within that range. It's about a 3-year process because they have to know who you are. They have to see you. If you show up a few times, that person is going to get a placing above you. That's just the way it is. I mean, there was a couple of guys in the top 5 that I thought, man, if I wanted to be that smooth, I never would have dieted at all. Like, they just looked like that contest was like another 3 months. But they were there. They've been there before. They put them in the top 5 as a thank you for showing up, and that's just the way it is. But you have to know that going into it, that in this life, not every playing field is equal. That's just the way it is. So it's not an excuse. It's just there. So that's part of it. So I have to go over it, and I was thinking, how else can I make this relate to other people? And for me to sit there and say, this situation is screwed up, it's not fair, or I'm just angry, none of these things help. What does help is to sit back and say, what is the real emotion going on behind here? Because my self-esteem is very high. I feel good about myself. Someone said, well, you feel good, but you don't seem like you're feeling good. It's like, because, and then I had to think about it. What is that inner emotion? And everybody can do this in their own life of what they're really feeling. Like if you come home and you see your husband or your wife, and someone says, how are you? And you say, oh, my life sucks right now. Well, we know you don't feel good, but that's unnecessary to say because you're not getting any closer to the feeling and nobody can help you. And all you're doing is, and the word is with an M, you're mucking up the situation to a point where you're not having a relationship either with yourself or your partner when you say that, because you're not really filtering down to how you really feel. And until you can analyze your emotions, and I was going to actually do the show today on emotional literacy, so I'm trying to like border the two. As a supposedly emotionally literate person that I'm supposed to be, I'm not angry. I don't think the whole thing is screwed up. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I love bodybuilding, and it might be at that level that I can't do it anymore. And that's disappointing. And it hurts. I don't feel bad about me. I feel really good about me. You know, it's just that it's disappointing. I was doing some reading, of course, and I came across some Aldous Huxley, I believe you pronounce his name. This guy was like one of the brightest minds ever. He wanted to be a scientist, but he was going blind. I don't know, I never had a chance to talk to him, but I would say that he was really disappointed that he couldn't be a scientist. So he had to figure out something else that he was going to do with his life. Now, it might be plan B or plan C, but he needed something. So he turned to like science fiction writing, and he wrote Brave New World. Now, great book. It was a movie. We all get to talk about it and see it and do all this. But in his mind, that was like plan B or C. That was not what he wanted to do. And so there was his doorway. Now, I have to figure it out for myself, as do a lot of people that are listening to this. You don't have to be a bodybuilder to go through this. You have to be anything to go through it. Like, we all are going to have our roles change. One of the things I was thinking of is how many couples out there break up because they lose a child. Now, logically speaking, it should bring people together and closer, right? Or like if you lose a child, or there's a child that's, say, stillborn, these things really separate mothers and fathers out. And one of the reasons for it is because when you have two people that are parents, and then all of a sudden something stops, their role changes, their identity changes, they grieve in different ways. You know, one person doesn't want to talk, the other person does want to talk, the other person needs to be totally left alone, somebody needs more attention, and you grieve in a certain way. And it's the same thing when you, and I'm not comparing losing a bodybuilding show to losing a child, okay? But the point is that all of us at some point are going to have a role or identity change. And in how you deal with it is how you will have a successful or a non-successful life. In my situation with this bodybuilding thing, I've competed probably an average of maybe once to twice per year since I was 15 years old. So it's really hard for me to think in terms of not doing it. So the disappointment is great. I have some reasons for thinking that it also goes back to my childhood of wanting to be perfect in order to be loved. And when I have to come back and tell people that I failed or I lost, am I still lovable? Somebody might be saying, you know, come on, man, that's a really dumb question. Well, I'm really glad you had an excellent childhood, not to, you know, because I would hope you think like that, because that would mean that you had a nice childhood and you had a very validating environment. I personally did not. So I base off of, like, if I lost something, I wasn't worthy to be cared about. And so I've spent my life getting straight A's and being captain of this team and that team and the other team and trying to be the best looking guy in the room. And as I get older, I notice that that's not happening all the time now. So the question becomes, am I still lovable? And that is where the childhood trauma comes up and still creeps up on you. It never goes away, but you have to learn how to manage it. There's a movie that everybody remembers that I want to mention, because everybody remembers all these great romantic flowery scenes, and that's not why I remember it. So that's why I want to mention it. It's a movie called An Officer and a Gentleman, right? We all seem to know that movie. Everybody talks about the whole Richard Gere thing, Deborah Winger. He takes her and carries her out of the work. I remember that, but that made no difference in my life. What I thought about was his friend. I believe his name was Sid. John Sid. In the movie, this guy Sid was trying to be an officer, just like Richard Gere. He has this girlfriend. Girlfriend says that she was pregnant. He's trying to be a really good man. He's from Oklahoma. You know, they have him as the, you know, not so sophisticated, but a very loving guy.
Yeah.
So he says to her, I quit. I don't want to be an officer. I don't want to be here and there. I want to be able to be around the child and you. And we can go back to Oklahoma and we can be parents. So he gave up the title of officer. She says, I'm not going to marry you. I don't want to be with some Okie from Muskogee. I want to be with a man, an officer, a guy with a uniform, someone who's got some stature. He goes, next scene, he hangs himself. Now, the point being is that, trust me, I'm not hanging myself, but
Happy to hear that.
but the message to me is, when a lot of people say that the title doesn't matter and you're lovable anyway, even though you're a failure or if you lose. I don't know if that's so true, because in my life, I've not really had that. You know, it's either you're great, you do everything for me in an awesome way, and if you don't, I'm out. Like, I've never been a cocaine addict or a drug addict for 20 years and had somebody still stand by my side.
I'm here.
I've acted perfect, but not to be whatever.
Oh, God.
But I don't think you have to put up with anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the issue. Like, there's some people that I know that they've had people stand behind them rock solid, yet they're alcoholics, they're never home, they're beating on people. I've never done any of that. And so I don't know what it's like to push the envelope to see if people really do care about me when I'm a screw up. I find that it's easy to love people when you're doing everything almost to a degree that you're trying to be a perfectionist. So you're not really testing somebody's care about you. But we'll get back into this a little bit more. Let's take a little break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Rise Above Show. I am Joe Peroni.
I'm Heidi Mancini.
And today we're talking about what it feels like to make a goal, do everything you can to achieve it. You keep your self-respect, your self-esteem by living up to your best, and yet it just doesn't work out for you. And so we have to think about what do we want to do with that. We have some choices at that time. We can continue in that direction to try to get that goal, but is it something that you should continue to go for? Because in everything we have a risk to benefit ratio, or what you could call a garbage in, garbage out. Like, is what you're putting into it, is it enough of an investment to where when you do well or you don't do well, because it's not guaranteed, is it worth the negativity? And I think that's a big part of it. In terms of, for me, at this moment, and you'll have to figure it out for yourselves in your lives, that there is a lot of time and effort put into bodybuilding shows. To the point when I was very young, I never even considered the thought that if I was nice to my family, I never considered the thought if I was nice to my girlfriend. I was never concerned if I was too tired to, I don't know, walk the dogs, anything like that. I was not concerned about my work. There was a time when I worked at a sweater factory, and I couldn't care less whether I was good at it or not. And so when I did bodybuilding, it became this all-encompassing thing. Obsessive to the highest degree, and I just did it, and I did not worry about anything else. So I didn't really feel like I had a positive to negative here. Everything to me was positive, like just do it. Now, as I get older, I notice that I'm emotionally very powerful. I diet and do all these things without really caring much. I hear all these other people crying and complaining all about their diet. I'm like, listen, this is self-imposed, so stop complaining. You either do it or you don't do it. But one of the things that I've noticed about myself is that my priorities are starting to change. It's getting to be like, I'll look at one of my dogs in the morning and I'll go, oh, I ran out of time, or I just don't feel the energy to walk her right now. And then later on in the day, I feel guilty. Guilt? I never had guilt before. Like, what is this guilt
thing? He's giving me dirty looks. She's like,
You know?
where's my walker? Where's
Yeah.
my walker, my daddy?
So I'm noticing guilt creep in. So that is part of the equation. With clientele, I do care about clients now. I care about other people's goals a lot, not just mine. When I was younger, I couldn't care less about other people, so it never even concerned me. Now it does. Now it's this thought of, okay, am I being the best I can be as a person all the way through? And I have to say I'm probably not when I'm dieting. So I have to factor that in as if I want to continue to do this. So there are things that are in my control. There are things that are not in my control. But all these are just basic decisions. One of the things I want to throw in here is that I've been doing this since I was 11 years old. And I keep wondering what draws me back to competition. And one of the things I notice is that because competition to me is real, it pushes you to be your ultimate best. It gives you a goal. It makes you committed. It makes you dedicated. It makes you're better than the herd. The basic person out there is an unconscious human being. They don't know why they eat. They have no idea what foods they're eating. They don't care. They don't care about what they say half the time. They just talk about what other people say. They don't really have a mind of their own. And to me, this is all what bodybuilding is. It's about creation of your own culture. I really don't care much about the Kardashians and this and this and that and the other on TV. I create my own reality, and I think bodybuilding is the best way to create your own reality. This is something I was started to write when I was on the plane in Fort Lauderdale. And these are just quick little things, and I did not edit this, so relax. It's not perfect, but you'll get my point, and John might want to throw in on this. And I'll probably say something later that will annoy John, but that's okay. I wrote this. To me, bodybuilding is one of the only things in the world that's real. And that's why I love it so much. A 100-pound dumbbell is always a 100-pound dumbbell wherever you are. Even if you have sex with the same person all the time, sometimes they like you, sometimes they don't. It's not the same, and it's not always real. And there's a lot of people in your life who you thought that they may have loved you, but probably didn't. Some did, some didn't. Some will be there, some won't. They fluctuate all the time. It doesn't take much for someone to be the nicest person in the world to you, and then in the next second they want to see the worst for you. And I've noticed that through life. That's just having experience. But I can tell you that when you work out and you're trying to do the best you can for you, 4 calories is 4 calories. A carb is a carb, a protein is a protein. I can see it. It's real. If I want to lose body fat, I can make that happen. If I want to gain muscle, I can see that happening. If I want to lower my resting heart rate, I can do it. If I want to lower my cholesterol, I can do it. It's within my control. It's real. There's very little in this world that I notice that's real. And once you start noticing that the world has a lot of illusions, it's hard to be totally happy with things. So you go inward and you find your own culture. I don't personally believe in culture. If somebody tells me that polka dots are in, I couldn't care less. They tell me that skinny jeans are in, I couldn't care less. They tell me that rap music is now in, I couldn't care less. It's about creating your own culture. That's what human beings should do. So one of the things I wrote is, we live in a system, capitalism, which is designed by humans, which is a fake construct, by the way. And most of these people, they do not have humanity's best interest in mind. Goods and services are marketed to the lowest common denominator of humans and seeks to exploit insecurities, low self-esteem, and ignorance by promising a false sense of belonging and pride, by encouraging a celebration of base instincts, no critical thinking, and a playing field that exalts the mob rather than the kings. And in a world of unconscious people, bodybuilders are conscious. In a world filled with problems, I live in a world that tries to create solutions. And in a world that is basically a bunch of spectators, I'm actually a participant. So I have no regrets of competing and losing. I'd rather be a matador and get gored to death than be sitting drinking a tequila in the audience complaining that you're not entertaining me enough. Right? So just put me in the arena. I wanted to compete, and that's where I always want to be. One of the things I noticed too that seems to be fake to me, and this is hard to admit, because I'm a Beatles fan, right? Like, I love music. But here's an interesting thing about what's real and what's not, of why bodybuilding is real to me. I gave you some of that, and I can tell you it's helped my self-esteem. It's helped every part of my life. It's given me my living. It's given me most everything. But let's take a look at somebody like John Lennon, right? He's known, and I love John Lennon, right? I love his music. I love the Beatles. Got that. But let's think a little more, a little deeper, right? Like, all you need is love. They're great at writing love songs. He's made millions of dollars about his love songs. Go to his own child. Now, Julian Lennon has been quoted as saying, you know, he speaks of love, but he doesn't show any of it to his son or the mother. And I'm like, you know, that's so, like, I don't want to be like everybody else. Like, oh, no, you can't talk like that about John Lennon. John Lennon's a human being. And this is part of the illusion that I was talking about. It's fake. If you can market the world to be something and make people believe it, you can be millionaire, and it makes it okay. Listen, it's not okay. He was a child abuser. He was emotionally abusive. He was physically abusive to his wife and his kid. And yet he's the great love guy in music. And the guy who shot him, and I'm not saying you should shoot him, because that affected me when I was 15 years old, just like it did everybody else. And I'm not even going to mention the guy's name, the murderer. But he did make one good point. He killed John Lennon because he thought he was a hypocrite, because he was one of the richest guys in the world talking about how it would be great to live with no material things and to talk about love and to be able to give love and get love, and yet he never did any of that. So it was a manufactured thing that he sold. And so when you start to think like this, it's like you want to make it better, you want to escape from it. All you have to do is say, that doesn't exist, and so I can go back on my merry way and be happy. But that's why I have so much trouble with the world, with a lot of things, and that's why I always end up in bodybuilding. Because a 100-pound dumbbell is a 100-pound dumbbell, whether it's in Texas, Florida, New York, or Nevada. And if I can lift it 10 times today, that's where I'm at. If I can lift it 15 times next week, I've improved. If I can only lift it 5 times 2 months from now, I've regressed. You can always judge it, and it's always real. Always. Any thoughts?
I would have to agree with the weight training. But I would also say that you're right about the fakeness in our society and that, but I also think that more people need to maybe not be so fake and be themselves. You know, I mean, I think that it should come to a point in our lives that we should be able to be who we want to be and not have to worry about fitting into everybody else and what they're doing.
Right, and I
think it's particularly hard. I think it's hard on men. I'm not a guy because I don't want to be one, but no, I don't mean that in a negative way. I enjoy being a female, but I think in a woman's part of the world, there's so much of that's why you have so many women walking around not having a clue about most things, because they're fed all the superficial, fake. You know, look at makeup, for example. You know, I mean, that's like one of the biggest selling things on the market. Makeup is millions and millions of dollars, so that we as women can say, well, I don't look good unless I have my makeup on. You know, so, you know.
So here's the ironic part that I was thinking when most of this, my thought on that was from Florida to here. But understand that I was going through like 24 hours with no sleep. So, but it's ironic that people think of bodybuilding as superficial, and it can be. People use it for the wrong reason. It's superficial. But in my thing, it's been since I was a little kid, it's changed my life, right? I was this small, skinny, sickly child, and then I became what I became. And so to me, bodybuilding, like I said, it's the opposite of superficial. It's as deep as you can get. It works on every cell in the body from the inside out, and it's been my real religion. It's been, the gym is my church, and it's been like that since I can remember. I remember my parents bought me my first weight set when I was 11 years old. It changed my life. And, you know, as I go through this process, nobody's saying that I can't compete anymore. It's just saying, like, should I compete at that level when I might not be able to get much out of it from my work? But I will always train.
Well, you know, that's your decision, you know, whatever you decide to do with that. Hair, I'll use that as a little example right now. I've been doing hair for 30 years, and I've done everything as far as platform work. I've done everything and anything you want to know, I've done it. And I'm not bragging, but that's my reality. I've been around a long time. So a couple years ago, I was like, God, I'm so damn bored. Like, what? You know, these kids would come around these flyers. Hey, we got to do class on Monday. You want to come? It's on balayage. And I'd look at it and I go, you know what? No, I'm okay. But I mean, I still go once in a while because I always come away with something. You know, I learn something new when I go to a class every time. One thing I might come out with. But it made me like, I went, man, am I bored? You know, I've been in this so long that these kids that are doing it now are like, we have this new technique. No, you don't. Sorry about it. I was doing that back in the early 90s. I started that, not you. So, but I said to myself, I can either keep doing hair and really enjoy, because I really enjoy the people part of it, and I like being creative, and I like, you know, I really like my trade, my craft, whatever you want to call it. But there was a period when I went through it and I went, I'm bored, and I need to be challenging myself with other things. But it didn't make me quit doing hair. It just made me realize that, yes, you've been in this a long time, you know what you're doing. Yeah, it might be a little bit boring, but at the end of it, I still enjoyed it, and I still continue to do it. And I'm also doing other little things on the side to test some of the waters with the wellness coaching and little things I'm venturing out there. But that's a good example with the bodybuilding. I didn't say I'm bored out of my brain and everything's coming back. I don't get excited, and I should, my clients, none of my clients hear this interview, but I don't get excited like I was when I was a young stylist. I remember walking into a classroom and going, God, I can't wait to learn. I can't wait to see this platform guy. He's going to be amazing. Now it's like I go to the class and I sit and I listen to the same, and I kind of go, oh.
Yep, no, I know what it's like. That's because that's what bodybuilding is for me too. Like I don't read bodybuilding magazines anymore. Why? It's the same stuff over and over and over. It's like you do for 40 years. But that's where the competition comes in, right? That's the other part of, not only is it real to me, but it's the only thing that pushes me.
Right.
I noticed that, okay, so I got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And I'm not going to say I'm not proud and I'm not happy, because I'm both of those. But when you're at the Orleans Theater and you're graduating with 900 other people, it ceases to make me feel like I did something that's difficult to do, because I'm graduating with 900 other people. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess, you know, I'm not that good. You know, whereas when you win a bodybuilding show, you're in like rarefied air. You know, it's very rare, like to look at something and go, oh my God, like that is something special. Whereas I see therapists all the time, and half of them, you know, some of them are good, some of them aren't. Most of them don't care, some of them do, but they don't have any like extra special talent, so it kind of bores me in a way. It's not that exciting. Asking me a question about, you know, again, turning a wall into a doorway. The truth of the matter is that at some point, some doors, some walls are meant to be walls. One of the ways through this is to sit back and feel the pain. I guess you can read my shirt. One day this pain will make sense, right? Don't escape from the pain. Feel the pain. Understand the pain. Know where it is. Know where your disappointment lies. Figure out what you can do to make it better, to get what you want. Unfortunately, there might be a wall that you can't make it happen, which in that case, that's not bad either, because then that means the universe is telling you that a wall is meant to be a wall. It's time to start branching off to something else. The worst thing that I think that could happen to me, and make this relate to yourselves out there, is that the amount of supplementation that a bodybuilder needs to take is outrageous in order to keep up. If the wall is a wall and it's telling me to move and use my brain more, I need to listen to that, because I'd never want to get back from a doctor and they go, "Excuse me, sir, your liver enzymes are off the chart, your kidneys are failing." And then I would say, well, I did that because I didn't have the guts to change my identity. So sometimes you have to have the guts to change your own identity to start doing something new. And any self-doubt that you have about changing, self-doubt is excellent because it puts all the negatives in there that could strike back on you. So it makes you perfect yourself as a human being. I love self-doubt. The more self-doubt I have, the better I get. You look at it, you face it, you analyze it, and then you move on. So how much time do we have? Not much.
5 seconds.
5 seconds. All right, let me run through this really quick. This is how you deal with difficult emotions like this. Face your feelings without denying it. Then you separate your failure from your identity. It's not personal. Then you need to analyze everything open and honestly. Did you control everything that you can control? Did you do everything you could? Are the things that are holding you back outside of your control? If they are, then you might want to analyze if you want to keep banging your head against the wall. And you might want to find a doorway instead of the wall. Quitting versus personal growth. Again, if you can do the cost to benefit analysis and figure out that the cost is too much, the cost is too high, you're not quitting. You're moving to a place that's better for personal growth. And that's all I have to say about that. Did you want to add to it?
No.
No?
You
Okay.
did really good.
Thanks for listening. I'm Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Show.
And I'm Heidi Mancini.